Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to this session on the future of HR. Our keynote speaker today is Dr. Sunil Singh, founder and CEO of Mindstream Consulting. Allow me to introduce to you all our speaker today. Dr. Sunil Singh is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience with various business groups and diverse industries like pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, construction, telecom, and IT, to name a few. Sir is a practitioner of human psychology, coaching, leadership development, talent management, HR systems and processes, and HR automation. Sir has been the former CHRO at Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited and has transformed Cadila into GPTW certified organization. Sir has also authored multiple books and articles in global and national journals. Sir is also an alumni of Xavier Institute of Social Service from the batch of 1997 and is currently a member of the Board of Studies of XISS. We welcome you, sir, and I hope we have a great learning experience today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akshat. In fact, it's my pleasure, it's my honor to talk to all of you and to talk to Dr. Agarwal, who is here. I have been seeing him from my childhood days. And there's something common between his subject which my father taught, and today when I will be talking to all of you on the future of HR, I will try to borrow a bit from economics, which is in a way the backbone of how the work is structured, how work happens in our society, and why all of us come together to form an organization, what are some of the basics behind that, and together we'll try to see that where we are going. So before, in fact, I start, I would like some of you to talk about that where do you see HR going in next about 10 years from now. We have seen a very transformative event, not so good for some of us from the health perspective. Societies across the world has got impacted, but there are some positives. There are some positives from the perspective that how the work will happen in future. But I will stop here. I will take a 5-minute pause and would like all of you to maybe ask or maybe give your point of view. Where do you think we are going from the HR perspective? Will HR exist? Will HR exist in the same form the way it is today? Will some of the sub-functions the way we know, will they exist? Or will they go for some kind of a change in future? So these are some of the fundamental questions on which I will touch upon. But before I begin, over to all of you. Anyone who have a point of view on this, or anyone who wants me to talk about a particular area when it comes to future of HR, both points are welcome. So I'm going on mute. Any point of view?
Good evening, sir. Sneha here.
Yes, Neha. Where do you think we are going as HR?
So I think the current pandemic situation has taught us one thing, rather it has brought one thing in perspective that, prior to the pandemic, we were having this discussion if at all the HR functions will be there in the future or not. will HR be useful in the future scenarios or not. But this current pandemic has made us realize one thing, that is the human connect of the organization and the importance of the human connect. Because during the pandemic, the HR people have like truly served as the frontline workers. They have been on their toes, uh, informing the employees about the safety protocols and catering to their demands, catering to their queries. So I feel that it has strengthened the role of HR, and the future of HR is extremely strong in the future. That's what I feel, sir.
Thank you, Sneha. So there are many articles, publications, newspaper reporting, media reporting. All of them have said that HR have acted on the forefront, and suddenly HR have gained its importance during this pandemic. But probably let me make a controversial statement here. And the statement goes like this, is that there is a metaphor in Hindi which tells that दिया बुझने के पहले ज़्यादा फड़फड़ाता है, ज़्यादा तेज रोशनी देता है. Is there something like that which has happened in the pandemic? Or uh, will the HR remain the same, the way you know it today? Anyone else who would like to make a comment on this? But the way I see it, all of you are there who will write the future of HR, not me. It will be through all of you. The way I see it, HR will change its shape. Some of you will be the script writer for that. I have done my 20-year plus in HR. So probably I can see few more years, but it's through all of you, some of those changes will happen. So any more viewpoint?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So, as my friend Sneha has already mentioned a lot of things, that is what is also going on in my mind. That currently, due to the pandemic, the most hit individuals were like in person, like they were people, especially the migrant workers. They were the ones who were hit a lot, and HR were the ones who were in support or were the ones who took action in favor or against whatever was the circumstances of the organization. But in the future, I feel that since there is so much of technology um, that has been worked upon from like a decade now, there's machine learning, artificial intelligence, everything is going digital. So I feel that, and this is the question which has been asked by many people, that what is going to be the future of HR. So I think a lot of things are going to get digital. Probably many people may lose out on their job if they are not tech savvy or very associated with the technology, is what I feel, sir.
Good point. Very good point. Probably I would like to hear two more viewpoints, and then I will ask you the next question.
Good evening, sir. This is Rishabh Raj.
Yes,
Sir,
Rishabh.
according to my point of view, recently I was reading one article in People's Matter. It was stating that by 2028, not even 10 years, there will be a constant upskilling and digital dexterity to outweigh the tenure. Means the high value work will be cognitive in nature. More critical thinking, the creativity will be very high, digital upskilling. As we can see right now also, the digital learning and edu companies are very rising in a very boom. 60% boom is there during the COVID situation only. So I think in the HR will be with hands with artificial intelligence will go hand in hand.
Okay, good. So this brings me to the next question for all of you, is that when you think about HR and when you think about probably your career, what are the few things you think you will be doing when you enter an organization? What comes to your mind? As a HR person, when you will enter the organization, what will be your role? What are the different day-to-day activities? which you will be involved into, or day-to-day sub-function, function, which you'll be involved into?
So I think
Yeah.
most of the function will always revolve around the benefits for the employees only, those who are working and helping the organization to run. So
Okay.
the HR function will definitely be always being revolving around them only, the main job.
Okay. So this, when was the first HR department formed? Any idea? Anyone? When did the HR came into picture as a HR, the way we know it? Anyone? Is it?
I don't know if I'm correct, but it is the Tata Group that introduced it in India for the first time, the concept of HR.
Okay, good. Before that, work used to happen.
Yes, sir, definitely.
So
But
why HR
no
was not needed?
special effort was there for people and their well-being.
Okay.
But
So what comes first? Does the HR come first, or the work come first, or the organization comes first, or the society comes first?
sir, it's a loop. You cannot say this comes first or that comes first. Obviously, the organization comes first because only the work will happen, then you can take care of employees and their well-being. But also, these are the people who are at the very crux of the organization and are responsible for the overall uh, stand of the organization. And
Mm-hmm.
everything works in a cycle. Like if organization would work properly, it would obviously be able to take care of its employees, and vice versa. If employees are good, they will take care of the organization.
Okay. What used to happen? So I'll be keeping it interactive. So I'll keep asking all of you some questions, and it's not a question to the person who have just answered, but question to all of you. And I'm doing this question answer for a particular purpose, to go into a direction. So she talked about organization, its role, very interesting piece. But my question is that, did organization always existed in its current form? What used to happen when organization, the way we know it, was not there? Was there no economy there? Was there no work? Was there no means of livelihood? Was there no income?
So I'm also a student of economics. So there was always a some or the other kind of work that used to happen, be it barter system, starting from barter system. So income was either in the form of goods, now to money, be it plastic money or the hard money. So the work was always there, but over the period of time, it became more and more structured, and that's how organization formed. And now it's way more structured and people are being taken care of very well. Earlier labor was very much readily available. Now also it is readily available in India, but labor was treated as commodity earlier, which is not seen now. So there are a lot of changes that happened over the years and over the decades.
Okay, good point, Japriya. Probably now next question not to you, but to all of you. Isn't labor still treated as a commodity? And not only probably in India, but I'm looking at a global scenario. Is not labor still a commodity?
So if we talk about globally, then there are few places, or I can say a few countries where labor are still being held as a commodity.
Okay. So let me give you an example. So let's talk about the new age organizations. And in between, just keep reminding me that you are getting bored, so I will keep asking you some new questions. But I think all of you have given me enough meat to talk about. So, Mohit, good evening. So the meat which you have given me is that organization is probably mandatory to be there. It's a structured form. Somebody talked about labor was a commodity. Labor is not a commodity now. So some of the new age organizations. So what about the Uber or what about the Ola? Do they represent the new form of organization?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So when the Uber works globally with, and how do they describe themselves? Do they call themselves a cab service or do they call themselves as a technology service? Uber describes it as a, what is the description? Are they a technology company or are they a cab service provider?
I don't know very correctly, but I think they say that drive and they deliver means they connect with the riders, and now they have come up with Uber Eats also. They come up with riders, eaters in the restaurant. They connect people.
Okay.
So they
So they,
more or less describe themselves as Uber Technologies. So
yes, so they are a technology company. That's how they describe it. And globally, what is the power which a driver commands in their entire ecosystem? Are they better off or are they better off working with a smaller service provider?
Definitely not with small service providers.
Okay,
You're
good.
a global company, they have to work with a larger extent so that they can have a more control in more number of nations.
Okay, good. So what I will do now, I will give you a little history of how the work and organizations have evolved. And Priya did a good job by reminding me that there was something called a barter system, which probably existed, at least in India, uh, till probably even 1960s and 1970s, because I remember that when I was in my village, I used to take some rice or the wheat and go to the shop and buy something in place of that. So, and my birth year in 1974, and I was there in my village probably till 1978 or 79. So I think I do have a memory of at least till 1979 that barter system did exist, and probably barter system even exists now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the different forms of barter do happen between organizations, between countries, right? So when did the Industrial Revolution took place? Anyone have any idea? Because that is where the history of organization dates back to. And if you understand that better, we will be able to see that where we will be going in future. Somewhere to see future, it's always good to see some past as well. Anyone have any idea when did the Industrial Revolution took place?
Mid 18th century.
Mid
So
18th.
somewhere around 1760s.
Yes, that was the probably. So I'll keep that simple for all of you to understand. So prior to that, still work used to happen, and as the human civilization grew over the years through different kind of civilizations, kings, kingdoms, One of the things as part of the work, which was a very strong system, which survived till the probably the early part of industrial revolution till probably 1800, was a system called a guild system. Anyone have any idea what is guild? Guild was the form in which the work used to happen, and guild was organized around different uh, types of professions. It can be a guild for blacksmith, it can be a guild of the goldsmiths, it can be a guild of maybe some kind of traders which are trading into similar kind of commodities. So there were guilds prior to industrial revolution, and even when you visit now in different parts of India or different parts of the world, you will see some of the masterpieces, be it in art or craft, which were produced by those guilds. People still see them in awe that, okay, what a masterpiece. So that was the early guild part. If any one of you have ever come across this word called guild, the spelling is Guild.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
what was guild? How did
Sir,
people used
it's
to come together?
more.
How they used to work? How the skills were controlled? Because this is where the answer of future of HR is. So skills used to be learned, the skills used to be transferred from people to people. So you were saying something, Amber, right?
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
in my opinion, sir, a guild is somewhat kind of a fraternity where
Mhm.
people with common ideas or common skills band together in order to either develop something or in order to leave a legacy or train their own subordinates or their apprentices so that their specific task or skill continues throughout into the future.
Okay. Uh, so it was pretty much a similar. Yeah, Risa was saying something.
Aside the same thing, it was actually basically for an example, the painters belong to the painters guild and carpenters belong to their own guild, and they used to
Mhm.
oversee whether the work is be done according to the set format that they have set for their own guilds.
Okay. Do you see any one of you again some signs of some signals that a very different kinds of guilds are emerging nowadays? Okay. How many of you have heard about something called gig work? GIG, gig work.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
All of you have heard about that. All of you
Yes, sir.
have heard about something platforms like Upwork.
yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Good. So probably this is where the connection lies. I'll go back to the guild then, and I will give you one simple concept. So I uh, tend to move between a researcher and a corporate person and a business person to HR person. So this was an interesting concept which I read in something called organizational theory, and there was a concept called simulacra. Simulacra, simulacra. And it said that once upon a time, there used to be an original product. Once upon a time, there used to be a original product. Then came a time when there was a mass copy of those products. And then came a time that there is no copy which ever existed, and products came from the thin air. So it was like we started selling products and services, which was simulation in the air. Can anyone of you figure out what this sentence means? Once upon a time, there was an original product. Then came a time when there was a mass copy of the product. And then came a time when nobody knew that there was an original. And finally, we landed up in a situation when there was
So,
actually no original copy.
so we can take an example of the company Xerox.
Mhm,
Uh, that they had first, we can say, championed or pioneered the idea of photocopying.
mhm,
Then that was the first commodity or product that they had come up with.
mhm,
However, over time, they've monopolized so much, and that's become so common that instead of photocopying, the act of photocopying, they people usually colloquially they just say Xerox.
mhm,
So the idea has become so pervasive that the first origin has been, sir,
mhm.
evolved and changed into something which is very common to everyone right now.
Okay. You are in the right direction, Musa. But I'm talking a little different. So it's like when we talk about original product, probably there was a wheat, there was a flour, probably there was a rice field, paddy field, and then there was a rice. I can connect from where the product is coming.
Yes, sir.
Then people started using products like Coke and Pepsi, if you look at, which had no original per se. And then you had the multiple concept based selling, which I can't connect back to any real thing. So
Yes, sir.
that is what it meant. So
Okay, sir.
let's go back to the guild part. So during the early part of the civilization, when the probably the earth had a lesser population, and which kind of was a good thing for a guild to survive, and it survived till about 1800. Early signals of the guild you can trace back in history around the 300 century BC. So that's when the guild started coming into picture. And it was a collection of the different kind of service providers, professionals, art and artisans, craftsmen, and they used to serve the requirement of the mankind. And people used to be very happy, and they had a certain artisan, a certain craft person whose services they used to take, and they were happy about. And then came the early, I will say, 1800, late 1700 industrial revolution, and we started making the factories. And the factory was symbolized by also the emergence of a gentleman called F.W. Taylor. Anyone have ever come across his name?
Yes, sir.
What was he famous for?
So he was known as the father of scientific management. So
Okay.
he established a scientific way of managing labor and
Yes.
workforce.
And this is where probably dates back the early part of HR. But I will not suggest that HR never existed before that. I'll come to that question. But HR, the way we know, started emerging from here because there was a factory which came into picture. It was no longer the artisan's lab or the house where the service or product is going to be produced, but it just started happening in some kind of a factories, which started in Europe. It started in US, the way we know it today. And gentleman F.W. Taylor and his compatriots, they were known for something called time and motion study. And I had studied his book, the original book. And this gentleman was a very interesting guy. He used to measure how many steps he have taken during the day. He was maverick, mad, whatever you want to call. But this is what he was interested in, that if I'm doing some work or I'm doing a video, if he was alive today, he would have measured that how many blinks I have taken, or how many times I have raised my hand, or how many times I have paused. This is what his interest was. He used to, he thought that I will control every possible human movement and through that, I will improve productivity. So that was his era. Then came and if you look at organizations, the way it evolved during that time, it was very much process oriented, very much bureaucratic, right? It was a hierarchical organization. That is the way organizations emerged during that point of time. So how did this shift happen? What led to people now suddenly shifting their buying pattern from a guild, say, for example, say Amber used to produce the best form of gold or ornament. Suddenly you stopped buying from Amber and have went to somebody who have established a factory of ornaments. Why did the people shifted their, I will say, consumption behavior? Any idea? What happened? Okay. So let me help you. So some of you may be familiar with also, let's not go to 1800, but 1800 to the 1900 time when the Britishers were in India. And we kind of industrialized at a later stage. We, Tata was probably, and Japria, you were right, that the first form of some kind of a structured organization. But before that, what happened? Why did the entire textile industry shifted from India to the UK? Why? What was the reason? So there were certain benefits of the mass production, and benefits where it was much structured, you were able to produce cheaper. But was there some kind of a loss which humanity felt when the mass production was happening? Is there something which people lost in the process?
So empathy towards the laborers,
Okay.
like they were subjected to work day and night without any rest, is what we learned in the history books.
Okay, so that's the one part. But I'm talking about our experience with the product and service. And if you interact with your parents or you are probably too young, but maybe with your grandparents,
So the
they used to have
quality.
quality, yes. And there were certain other types of complaint which used to happen.
So, Britishers, what they did was, since labor was cheap in India and they were ruling at that point of time, so
Mhm.
they started producing. The mass production was done here, but the
Mhm.
sole authority of selling it and earning profits out of it was in the hands of Britishers. They used to sell it globally, and in order to sell it globally, they had to do
So,
mass productions.
So, Japri, I will just stop you here. You are saying the right thing. That was the one part. But what I'm trying to drive all of you at is that when I used to remember, so let me remember my grandparent. Probably he will never buy a Bata shoe or and in the early part, probably Professor Agarwal will also talk about that. People don't used to buy the ready-made shirts and the trousers. They used to prefer go to a tailor so that I have got a right fitted shirt and trousers. And this behavior continued, I think, quite late. I think all the Raymonds of the world started selling the trousers and this thing maybe around 1980s when they became popular. And now you have got Mantra, Amazon, and Flipkart doing the same thing. Uh, so my question was, when the mass production happened, did people lost something in the process?
Sir,
Because
I don't know if I'm right, but sir, it was at that time when machines got introduced. So,
Mhm.
sir, with the incumbent of machine in UK, sir, the jobs were lost here, and employment got lost for many workers, because those who used to work and make handmade clothes, now the entire gamut has been shifted towards machine making clothes.
Okay.
And so the employment also got lost, and people bought those clothes because of they were cheap
So that's
than
the one part, Krishna. So I'm actually driving all of you to a very different point. So let me.
So
Yes, you were saying something, Sneha.
like to give it a try.
Yeah.
So, sir, the most like disadvantageous part of mass production was that the things were not made as per the requirement of the like demand of the people. So
Mm.
they were like one thing was produced in a large quantity. So
Okay.
people had to make do with that only. They could not get it customized as per their vision, like their vision fancy. So
Okay.
that people like used to avoid mass production because though it used to be very cheap, but it could not be customized as per their demand.
Okay. So you have gone there. So one thing which people lost in the process is the personalization. So I remember my early days of childhood days. So there's somebody who will visit the village, the house, and they will show the ornaments, maybe for the marriage purpose during that season or for any other purpose. And there is that personal connection with that person, and buying is happening through that personal connection. And when the organization happened, in the industrialization hierarchy, and then the overall, I will say, doing away of the personalization. So one thing which humanity lost in the process of the mass production is the personalization of service. And probably this is what is going to come back when we say that what will be the future of HR. And to all of you, we think a lot around uh, employer, employee, the relationship, empathy, exploitation. All that are incidental to the way the society evolves, or the way society consumes services and products. It is society does not exist because of organization. It's the other way around. Uh, Work is more primary in nature. People will find some way of working. They will have some kind of work to do. So work, I asked one question, what comes first? Does the society comes first, work comes first, organization comes first? Work always comes before organization. So one of the theory which again in economics, Japriya, is that which tells which became the basis of the outsourcing of jobs. And this is probably the smallest thesis, PhD thesis so far. So Professor Agrawal will talk to you about at some point of time. But this gentleman's name is Williamson Coach. And Williamson Coach gave a theory called transactional cost. And it pretty much summarizes, he can explain all of you in a greater detail, but it summarizes that for anything to happen inside the organization, the cost of transaction outside have to be the higher. If something can be done outside at a cheaper, better alternative, that will not happen inside the organization. And whatever we saw in around 1980, 1990, early 2000, the whole wave of the BPOs, the outsourcing of jobs from transnational companies, MNCs to different parts of the globe, happened because some part of the job which organizations consumed within themselves, it was far cheaper, far better to be done outside. So it's not something which organizations are there and they will exist forever. It's an evolving phenomenon. Now I will take you. So I'm not going to get into motivational theories or other thing. because after the FW Taylor, the exploitation, the whole human relations era came, behaviorist came. So all of you all would have already studied that. I'm not going there because that will divert the subject. But so one was the guild, then the industrial revolution, and then came the something called the computerization as a era. Then came the computerization came somewhere around. If you look in Europe and the US, it came around early 1950s. But for that, for actual impact to happen, impact started coming in, I will say, early 1970s. So if you look at most of the companies like IBM or GE, their establishment are somewhere between 1970 and 1980. That's when some of them got established. So that was the earlier part. So they actually further increased the mass, I will say, service mass production, uh, but maybe a better copy. So prior to the computerization era, I had a limited capacity to mass produce. After computerization, I can do the mass production at a much higher scale, which led to the, I will say, rise of multiple multinational giants. So if you trace back how the organization have evolved, it was the 1970s, 1980s, when you will see the first signs of signals of MNCs going global, transnational organizations. They started coming into picture. But then came the whole digitization piece. So some of us have seen the B drive, A drive. Some of you might not have even seen. So we had a large floppy disk, a small floppy disk. Then it led to the CDs. But now I can have a pen drive which I can't even see, but it will copy everything. So that digitization of the content started coming around, I will say, post 2000, early 2010. That's when the digitization started. So from the HR perspective, if you look back, so when you trace back that, when suddenly you see the emergence of the learning content, LMS, talent management process, they started picking up because a lot of that can be mass produced as well. And this is when the HR started moving, really taking a new shape. That was the post 2000. But what is now happening? What is now happening is something called digitalization. Can anyone elaborate that? What's the difference between digitization and digitalization? Anyone? Or I will add one more question to this. I'm not going to reduce the number of questions, but I will add some questions so that after you leave the meeting, you can go back and search. So another question is, what is the platform-based organization? A new terminology has started coming up. So we had organizations, but now people are talking about platform-based organization. How the platform-based organizations are different from the earlier organizations. Any idea?
So can I answer the former part of the questions or the first part? You
Sure,
asked the
Musa,
difference
go ahead.
between So according to me, as the word suggests, digitization and digitalization. Digitization is more narrower in its coverage. It's basically relating with the numerical data that you derive, and it's just arranging the data. Whereas digitalization is making use of the data that is acquired and trying to implement it into your decision-making process
Okay.
to expand your business and the productivity overall, sir. So that would be the main difference between the two.
So initially digitization was linked to what you said is the some form of data, some form of data analytics. But when I look at digitalization, interaction between me and my car can be digitalized. Is it possible or not?
Yes, sir. It is possible.
It's possible. Um, if some of you are technology buff, you may be also interested in knowing that probably will the mobile phones exist the way we use it today, or will the mobile phones get inside our body?
James Bond already has one.
So this is where we're going to. In fact, if you look at some of the research which is happening around the globe, so and this is something, Professor Agarwal, so as part of my Reliance days, early days, I was involved into HR transformation and digital transformation. And that's the time I invested a lot in kind of reading about the newer research in terms of what's happening. I interacted with, so the way you, all of you know the LinkedIn Learning, I interacted with LinkedIn Learning team when it was in lab. Prior to that, they used to call it Linda. That's the time I actually came across a paper which tells that in US, they inserted a chip on the volunteer employees, and which allowed them to open the gate or to pay by waving the hands. So these are the kinds of research, and I'm talking about probably 2014, 2015. So 5 years prior to today. So probably in the 5 years, technology would have moved far ahead. So now I will come back in the present, and this connection was important for all of you to understand. There was a guild where all the individuals used to get very personalized service. Probably not entire part of society used to get those services and products, which got satisfied when we moved to the mass production, which led to the hierarchical organization. But as the computerization, education, everything went ahead, the whole human relations era came. The issues of diversity, empathy, labor as a commodity or not as a commodity, all things started gaining prominence. And when these things happened, HR also evolved. So we had earlier administration department, personal department, they all became the HR department. Things like assessments came into picture, things like lifelong learning came into picture, job satisfaction became important, employee satisfaction became important. But what will happen in 2030? So few examples I will give you, and this is where some of you talked about the pandemic and how it has played out. So I will give you an example, one of the change which I brought in Reliance Industries when I was there. So I set up something called the R University. And one of the behavior change which we wanted to bring about is that move the people away from the classroom kind of a learning to a more digital learning. And this was I call it a behavior change. It's but not something a technology change. Because LMS was always there. In fact, there were different kind of a learning content provider subscription which was there, but people never used to use that. People used to feel good about going to classrooms. Some people maybe for snacks or the lunches, some people for learning, or some bosses used to send not so required people to the classroom. So one thing which we did there, and this was in 2015, when so we made a conscious decision that we'll actually lock the classroom for 1 year. And I remember even now, because it met with a lots of resistance, right from the business heads to the faculties, which used to feel powerful for going into a classroom and talking to people. And believe me, it gives a lot of satisfaction, but at times also people generate power from there. So not only from the business heads, but also from the faculties which used to teach in those classrooms, they felt that what a bad decision, that this is going to take learning away from, and the organization will lose out, all that will be there. But one thing, if anyone of you know about addiction as a de-addiction as a process, is that if I am addicted to a particular type of behavior, de-addiction, I have to keep that particular product away from that person, then only de-addiction is possible. And this was a change which we wanted to bring, that move people away from the classroom, because Reliance was like 1.5 lakh people in the Reliance Industries. If I have to do an intervention across organization, it will require a humongous number of trainers and the faculties. So it was not possible. As the Reliance was growing, we had to move from the brick and mortar form of learning to a more digital form of learning. And it took me almost like 2 years to move the learning from a brick and mortar format to a digital learning during that time. But now look at the pandemic, how the pandemic impacts. Suddenly, all those people who used to oppose, they are running the free webinars. There is all the, I will say, risk which they used to say that no learning will happen. How can somebody be listening to somebody through a laptop, through a mobile? That's not possible. But one thing which this pandemic has done, and all of you are in a way lucky, that something which could have taken for different organizations to transform 3 to 5 years, that transformation will happen in 1 year. I will give you another example from last company. So when I joined Cadila, I discussed with our business heads, especially in the domestic segment. In the pharmaceutical industry, you have got pharma companies which manufactures, and then you have got the pan-India network of medical representatives. And I was talking to the gentleman that, see, there's some change happening on the horizon, which we cannot ignore. And I was talking to that gentleman that there are things like Practo, there are things like NetMed, which is coming up. And believe me, younger generation, I saw them using even in 2018, 2017, 2016, lot more. There was a guy who was working with me, whose parents were in Bhagalpur, and this guy was in Mumbai. He used to order medicine using the Practo in Bhagalpur. So I was talking to this gentleman that maybe in terms of the way we are organized, this whole medical representative network, which is like 3,000 odd people on the field, we cannot ignore the emergence of these people. And then that gentleman used to say that, have you gone mad? This is all relationship business. Unless and until my guy will go and talk to the doctor, that doctor will not use my medicine. But now look at what has happened here. Now all the doctors have taken the subscription of the different patient management softwares, which is probably given by these pharma companies only. And that MR is no longer going to the doctor's chamber because doctors don't want to meet them. So this is something which is happening. And when all of you have to think about that how the HR will evolve, you have to first think about how the work is evolving. So how the behavior on the ground is changing. So this was one example that pharma sector, 3,000 workers in one company. If you look at likes of Cipla, Sun, they have got more than 15,000 people on the ground. And suddenly there is a change which has happened. right? And with this change have brought about significant change in the way the two parties interact. We all exist. HR exists because of business, not the other way around. We enable them. And this linkage, I think if any one of you forget, then it will be at your cost. So if I am able to see this change happening, I can be a better HR person by suggesting that it's time that we have to change our organization structure. Maybe it's time we have to change some of our work practices. So this is important to capture. But this pandemic has made things possible which would have taken for Netmade or the, so all of you must be aware that Netmade is now bought by Reliance Industries. Are you aware or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So why they bought it? They would have seen big value in that. Reliance always wanted to come into pharma sector. But in the earlier kind of setup, they were not interested because the whole value chain is big. You have the supplier of the raw materials, the manufacturer, then you have got entire CNF, stockist, then your retailer, then you have influencer, which is a doctor. The chain was pretty long, which were not making it possible for the Reliance to see the profitability into that. Now they have a life sciences business, but that's a very high-end drugs. But with Netmeds, they can control the value chain. So similarly, if you look at across any form of industry, whether it's the hotel or the travel, you are seeing two things happening. One is that with the digitalization, a scaling have got no limitation. In the earlier days, a scaling has limitation because of the capital issues and also because of the process issues. But today, the organization, and all of you would have heard about the concept called hyper organizations. So if you look at Uber, if you look at Amazon, if you look at Google, they are hyper organizations. They are network-based organizations. And in this market, it literally plays out till every other competitor dies. So this is a very interesting change which is happening. One of the things when we will be talking to our seniors, people who will be coming to the campuses, they will tell you that in the HR also, one thing which is happening is earlier there used to be one policy or one aspect of the employee's life. But people are now talking about personalized compensation. You heard about this word? Personalization of policies.
Is it cafeteria approach?
Even in the cafeteria approach, sir, so if we are going now beyond that, I can literally in the cafeteria, I can serve every customer differently. So I can think about now that for a similar type of job to be performed, I can have a completely different arrangement with 20 different people doing the same job. And that is pretty much feasible. So if somebody is a single mother or somebody is pregnant or somebody is staying in say Ghana, can't travel here, so one thing which happened in this pandemic, so I was talking to a few of the friends in the IDFC, and he was telling me about that there are lots of offices where there is a BKC. And in Mumbai, the real estate cost is higher than the employee cost. So they actually moved the employee relations into a very win-win kind of a thing. So they sent all the people to their hometowns. And they vacated their offices by paying a penalty. Normally, when you go into lease agreement for the offices, you have penalty clause that if you vacate before 3 years, 5 years,
You
then
can't do
pay
that.
some penalty.
Yeah.
So they paid the penalty also. And now the person who was from say Bakhtiarpur or Muzaffarpur or say Muzaffarnagar has gone there and is working from there. I have a house in Navi Mumbai. So person who is staying there, he went back to Kerala. He said that I will pay you rent for 3-4 months, but I don't know. I will see after 3-4 months that how it evolves. But my company told me that you go home and you can work from there. So these are very tangible changes which is happening. So some of the myths which were there, that I need everybody around me to get a work done, is completely broken. There were signals emerging prior to this as well. So I know one of the friend, his name is Ritesh. He was the chief economic advisor for Raymond Group. And in around 2016-17, he sold his house in Mumbai and bought a big bangla in Dehradun and have got tie-ups with different embassies, and he writes the economic policy papers for them sitting in Dehradun Bangla. So if I have a skill now, I can utilize in a way which was not even thinkable earlier. I needed to join an organization. So he writes blogs, he writes papers for different global newspapers and some kind of policy papers for the embassies. So that's what he does. So he left a job which was chief economic advisor for Raymond Group, and is now sitting in Dehradun enjoying the clean air. So this is where I wanted all of you to be aware about that HR exists because the way work happens. And if the way work happens is changing, we will have to think about that what kind of role we will do. That's very, very important. So I will show you one of the screen, which is today I was, let me see, I can show you. So this is a Harvard paper, which I will be displaying on the screen. 1 second. So it talks about 21 HR jobs of the future. Right? Do you know any one of these jobs? Any one of you?
I had it.
So this is very different. I don't see anywhere there is a performance management expert or a talent management expert or a training head or a learning head or a CTO or a recruitment head. This is not there. This is something very different. So my idea was to bring all of you here in terms of understanding that how the work will happen. Now I will come to the gig work. The way gig work is going, I call it digitalized guild. So earlier what used to happen, that there were only few people who were good people to give a certain type of services or products, and under their umbrella you had a group of artisans, apprentices, and that network was there. If some of you trace back to something like what happened in the IT industry and how the IT industry was different from other industries. So if you look at people in the IT industry, they are not known more for the organization in which they work, but they are known more for the different kind of software languages or the products which they can create. So you had the Python expert, you have got somebody who is an AI ML expert, somebody who is a Java expert. So you have people who are categorized by the different types of a skill set which they bring on the table. Somewhere that a skill set lost value. So I can have 1,000 people who can vary plus minus 20% on the skill set, but I can manage all of them through the single pay package. And that was possible because options were not there. What is happening in the new digitalized world is that the options can also be scaled up, and even the reach can be scaled up. So the way we will have to see the future of HR is that we may not be leading the large team. So today what was happening, as the organization grow, HR team size also increases, and you needed so many HR BPs, you needed so many training managers, you needed so many recruitment managers, recruitment specialists. Probably many of that will be outsourced. So what we will see in future, we will see in future umbrella organization like Amazon, and which is managing a large number of SMEs, MSMEs, and they are the backbone of that organization. Whether you where you look at even the Reliance, for example, so the way they are going into the whole retail as a segment, they will go the same way. They will probably bring the Kirana store under the Reliance retail umbrella. So this will be more about managing the network. So I don't need, one of the reasons why organizations were created was the need for control. And because of digitalization, that need for control is no longer there. I can have a better transparency created between two parties with the digital network. I don't need necessarily somebody to work for me directly. So what we will see that emergence of large organizations which will have the global presence. From the sociology perspective, it will have its own ramification. I will not go there. So for example, Nitin Gadkari says that he will not allow the driverless car in India. But talk to anybody in 1990s, there used to be the bank strikes for the computerization in India. But ultimately the computer won, the union lost. So technology, the way I see it, you cannot win with technology, win from technology, you can win with technology. So you will have to adapt to it, you have to make the technology as your partner, then only you have a better survival possibility, then only you can think about your career. But one thing which I will advise all of you is that this trend of for long-term career, that if I enter as a comp and ben expert, I can be there as a comp and ben expert for 10 years, or I'm a recruitment expert, will remain that way. That's going to change. The change, the way we have known so far, earlier, probably 10 years back, the word like VUCA came, but VUCA has been eaten up by digitalized VUCA. So the change has become much more faster. There will be requirement for people to multi-skill. You cannot think about a straight line growth. You have to probably think about non-linear kind of a growth in your career. That will happen even for the HR professionals. So if you think that after passing out from XISS, you get a job and you stop learning, that's going to be disastrous. Because many of the organizations itself will also change. Even when we think about the public sector, government organizations, they are also changing, they will change. So future is very different. It's no longer going to be the same organization. There's a CEO, or there is a vice president, there is a general manager, there are managers, there is executive. That's not the way it's going to be there. We'll have to think about all the time. If you're a true HR professional, always think about what is the purpose of existence of this organization. Can whatever is being done inside the organization be done outside in a much more efficient way? And if your answer is yes, then either you can suggest the same thing to your promoter, to your CEO, or you will start that piece outside. So that's going to be the future. So work is going to change fundamentally. Everything else exists. The entire organization, the way we know it, organization design, all of you would have studied. But whole purpose of organization is there because the work and the way work happens. If that is going to change, your role is going to change. So what will remain probably in future is a smaller core of HR will remain, which will be central inside the organization. But that does not mean that HR will vanish. So I asked one question, that will HR vanish? HR will not vanish. A large part of HR will get outsourced. If you look at lots of companies which are startup, small, medium, they have already started taking services for managing the HR through outsourced firms. So it's not going to be that. So what that means, that you have to think about your career not only in the established organization, but also with startups. And probably your career will grow much better in those startups than with the traditional established organization. So with them, opportunity will go down, but outside in the marketplace for HR professionals, opportunity will go up. But it will no longer, you have to think about that you just sort your CV and push it to somebody. That's not going to be the job. You will have to spend a lot of time into things like how do I do counseling? How do I do coaching? How do I manage interpersonal relationship between a geographically dispersed team? That's the way you will have to get familiar with the newer tools. Lots of Facebook recruiting happens nowadays. Lots of social media based recruiting happens nowadays. All of you have to probably also, the way I see it, you have to actually increase your footprints in society. If your footprints in different parts of the community networks are better, you will be a much more value add for any organization you are working for. So digitalization is the future, platform-based organization is the future. Somebody asked that question, platform-based organization. Platform, so think about organization as a different blocks, which are connected by the digital connectors. So what happens here is that can allow me to do away with one block at any point of time and plug something different. So that is the way that it's kind of a platform-based visualization of the organization. So in fact, I will give you one example from Reliance and my interaction with the Mukesh Bhai. So he used to say that you would have studied something called job evaluation, organizational structuring. And when you use platforms like SAP or SuccessFactors or the Workday, there's something called a work unit, position, role. And the way those softwares were configured at that point of time, that is little rigid. I can't keep changing it every time. And he used to say that I want to change my organization, possibly every day, possibly every week. Can you give me that functionality? So if a businessman is asking that, that means that is the flexibility he is looking for. Whereas the software which is created by the HR people at that point of time was that once I've configured the basic org unit and the positions in the system, changing it becomes difficult frequently. So now the work requirement is changing, which means that now I have to think about that, can I on a fly change the org unit and the positions and the roles? So which is a different demand from all of you as HR professional. So this is where probably just few suggestions for all of you, and we'll end here and I'll be open for the questions, is that stay connected to the society, stay connected to the people around and their needs, because all the work which happens in the society ultimately emerges from the needs of the people. And if you know that equation well, then you can be a better HR professional. Second suggestion to all of you is that invest a lot of time in learning, relearning, learning, relearning. Don't limit yourself to OB or the HR or those kind of subjects. Stay a little more connected with the diverse subjects. Sometimes anthropology also can give you some idea. In fact, I will give you one example. This happened when I am Bangalore, and I was supposed to write a paper on the culture model. All of you have studied something called the Hofstede or Tompenar model of culture. Have you heard about the Hofstede model of culture? So that's one of the most famous models. Probably you can go back and check. So I wanted to challenge a bit of that. There are different parameters there. It talks about individualism versus collectivism. It talks about the power distance. And the way I looked at probably India as a culture, I said that, no, probably we are not the same all across. If I meet people from the Meghalaya versus the people from the Punjab or versus people from the Kerala, there are certain distinct characteristics which are different. And if I look at the Hofstede model, it characterizes India as a one culture. So I wanted to challenge that. And when I was looking at all the management books, it didn't give me any idea. But then I looked at cultural geography, I looked at anthropology, I looked at sociology, and that gave me a better culture model. So be little diverse in the way you read, way you learn. Don't limit yourself to do only one source of learning. If you limit yourself to one source of learning, you will become single dimensional, unidimensional. So be multidimensional, always have some kind of a hobby. And last advice will be always be prepared to move from one domain to the other domain. Don't, I will say, typecast yourself that you are a HR person, or you are a recruitment person, or you are a compensation person, or you are a finance person. Future of career is going to be much more fungible. It's going to be much more temporary in nature, and it will demand from all of you some immediate shifts at any point of time. So this is where I end. Any questions? I'm open to any kind of questions. I hope all of you found this interesting. It would have left some thought in your mind. Akshat, I'm done. Any questions?
Yes, sir. I would request the students, if they have any question, they can post it on the chat box and we can take it up from there.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, as you told that in coming future, the HR will be outsourced. Most of the HR function will be outsourced. So then there will be one situation, just like if the HR is in the organization, they have a feeling of oneness that, yes, I have to look for this particular organization. And if there is any situation arises, they're going to be functioned accordingly. Now, if the HR responsibility is being outsourced and suddenly if there is a situation in the organization, how the outsourced organization will function for that organization? How it will behave, because they definitely have many n number of organization in them with them. So definitely the oneness will be missed.
Okay, so let me try to attempt. So as a human being, we tend to get anchored to one organization, one thought, and this is probably what you are reflecting at. So I will answer this through one of the recent experience which I had. So one of my friend, Sage, now based out of UK, and I was talking to her around the work practices. So one of the piece which is very known in Indian context is the dual employment. That if I'm working for one organization, I cannot work for any other organization, because so far employers used to think that I can't be loyal. But think about this from a different perspective. Think about particular service providers, which is providing service to you and also to all your classmates, maybe in terms of, I will give you another example. So think that you are going to a restaurant for a food, and you think that this restaurant owner have a special relationship with you, and whenever you go, you receive a personalized service. But do you think that this restaurant owner will be only having this relationship with you, or with somebody else as well?
It will be same for everyone.
Probably with others as well, right?
Yes.
So this whole concept, one of the reasons organizations exist is because of agency problem. Again, you can ask Professor Agarwal around that. Trust is a major issue. Somewhere the promoters wanted everybody inside because they can control them. And when I was talking to this friend of mine who was in UK, she was like, here is a general practice that people tend to have two employment, one main and one more other, and maybe two more other or three more other. So if I have a skill set, I can give to any number of organizations the way I like. Think about the professions like chartered accountant, legal services. A lawyer serves many organizations. So it's a kind of a somewhere unknown fear that this oneness will be gone. Probably it will not be. Because if you are honest to your profession, the kind of service or product which you are providing, whether your term of contract is a fixed term or the... One second, just my battery is going. I'll have to... Sorry for this. So I was talking about this imaginary fear we all of us think about, is that this oneness will be gone if some part of the HR gets outsourced. So one clarification, entire HR will not get outsourced, but a large part of it, maybe running the complete talent management process, maybe running the complete learning content provision for the organization, or maybe or doing the complete recruitment for organization end to end. So all of that will be, there's a huge chance that that will get outsourced. But whether you are inside or outside, I don't think that your oneness or loyalty will change. It's a unknown fear which exists at times in the mind of the organization and the people who are leading those organizations, and also in the minds of the employees. Many a times, many people don't take leave because they think that if they will go away, probably boss will know that work can happen without them. This is generally the unknown fear. So even in the HR function, this eagerness to stay close in the organization emanates from there. That probably if I go away, my job will go away. But that's not necessarily the case. And this is the reason I took all of you on that journey of evolution of the work, that how the work evolved from the guild system to the industrialization, to the computerization, to the digitalization, and to the now emergence of a digital guild. So what will happen, there will be a group of, I will say, good HR providers. Some of them will be known for the good counselors. Some of them will be known for the good coaches. And they will be really, really good in that. So if you look at many platforms which are emerging, which provides coaching services. If you think about organization like Mercer or Deloitte or the EY, right? They do assessment centers for organizations. They run leadership development programs for the organizations. But believe me, when they do that, 90% of their consultants are external. So, and I am saying this from my own experience. When I have given a contract to Mercer's or the Deloitte's or the EY's, the partner will come, win the business. They will show some profile on the screen, and when the actual project will happen, out of the 10, 7 will be outsiders. They will come, and you will never be able to even know if you don't ask them in detail that where do they belong. They will come under the EY brand name, or they will come under the Mercer brand name. But over the years, when I start seeing that, okay, I saw you doing the EY project, now you have come from the Deloitte side, then that guy will tell you, okay, I'm an independent consultant and I work for both. But when they are doing a Deloitte project, they are loyal to them. When they are doing a EY project, they are loyal to them. So, and some of these things as HR professionals, you have to start questioning, and you have to break those myths. So this is where the opportunity for you will also emerge. That is there something in the organization, we are keeping it inherently inside and having my cost structure going up, and it's serving no purpose. Because my controlling is also a cost. I need to have some kind of processes to control. If you look at, for example, for many of the pharmaceutical companies, they actually have outsourced their R&D. They have outsourced their clinical research. Can there be something more critical than a clinical research which is outsourced? If that can be outsourced, I don't think there is a very big chunk which is there in the HR. There are important things. You need people to connect with people. You need people to counsel. You need people to have deeper relationships. But that will be the core of HR, which will necessarily require human connect. But beyond that, be on the lookout for things that probably this is a transactional piece which can very well be outsourced. Think about legal services outsourcing. Many of the drafts which are submitted in the US courts, those drafts are created in India by the Indian lawyers. That's a critical job. So actually what happens when we start thinking about our own function, we become a little bit protective that, okay, I will not outsource. But when it comes to suggesting some other function that you outsource this piece, there we go fully liberal. What applies there applies here as well. And by that logic, the basic principle I said, what is the work where it can happen, where it is more efficient? Those are the fundamental questions which will decide that what will go out, what will stay in. It does not mean that things which are going out are less important or things which are staying in are more important. No, that is again a power question. Sometimes your people outside will charge more compared to people who are inside. It only tells me that I am risk-freeing myself for a continuity of this service for a longer period of time. If it is outside, if the economic environment changes, I can cut off the contract. When you work for a larger, I have been in Reliance for a long time. So there were fixed term contract, there was a full-time employee, there was a contract employee, there was a casual employee, and we used to interact, and we never used to see the difference between those. They are largely on the form of paper. But it only is that, and they are all used to work together. So this loyalty is a tricky question. It's not there. I'll take a few more questions which come. So Visakha, I think I have answered your question. Your question was, how is digitalization going to affect the role of HR? And how is the department going to cope up with it? So I have already covered that. So digitalization is going to very clearly differentiate between what is core and non-core. And even sometimes the core can be outsourced. So if you look at the practors of the world, the doctors who give you the consulting are actually outsourced, but they are the core. So similarly, it's not necessary that it's only the core which will remain inside. It can be the core which can also go outside. And how do we cope up with it? So to cope up with it, keep reading, keep learning. Don't take anything as a permanent thing, that this is going to stay the same way tomorrow. If you remain open, if you remain observant, you will be very well able to cope with it. Tushar asked about the personalization of HR. So I did touch upon the personalization of HR. Personalization of HR can be in form of the way the compensation are managed, the way the engagement is managed, even the way the recruitment is managed. Personalization can have any aspect of HR you can think about. Personalization can happen. Earlier, what used to happen, if somebody cannot come to office, I will not hire. If somebody is having certain types of constraint, I will not hire. If somebody can't move around, I can't hire. But some of those constraints will go away, and I can still engage the service of those people by providing much more personalized attention. When it comes to personalization of HR, especially in the reward format, what possibly Professor Agarwal will value and what Tushar you will value will be different. So a sim or what probably Amber will value will be different. So there is no need for having a single kind of pay structure. I can customize it basis your lifestyle, basis your life stage, and as your life stage change, your pay package can change. So that can be a very well customized to an individual. Earlier, it was not possible because people used to say how many files I will maintain, right? How many data analytics I will run. So it was always better to have a single kind of a structure for a single type of role, and with single formula, I can apply to all those people in that role. But now there is no such need. With the digitalization, with the AI capability, I can pinpoint a person and understand that person need and customize the reward package for that person. And when I say reward package, I'm not talking only about the monetary piece, but also the experience piece. Even the experience is a reward. Even the non-monetary thing is a reward. So everything goes together. Personalization may lead to complexity. Yes, earlier it used to lead to complexity, but nowadays it's more about generating one option for the AI robot, which will handle the complexity. You just have to think about more options and keep adding into the formula. The rest, leave it to the AI. Good, so thank you. All of you can always reach out to me on my email ID, which is sunil.singh@mindstream.in. So again, for me, for example, I left my CHRO job. In last 6 months, I have learned how to develop a website. I have learned how to set up a chat box at the age of 45. So there is no right or wrong time for learning the new things. And this is what I request all of you to do, is that keep learning newer things. Don't typecast that you are a HR person and hence you need to know only this. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Agarwal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Akshat?
Yes, sir. So on behalf of the entire fraternity of Xavier Institute of Social Service, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Sunil Singh for having taken out his precious time and devoting it to our lecture today. Thank you, sir, for your valuable input, and I'm sure our students have always been enlightened by your thoughts. Thank you to all the professors and students who have joined us for this webinar today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I will log out now. If you have any more questions, you can always drop on my email.
Thank you very much, Sunil.
Thank you, Sunil sir.
Just one
Thank
point
you.
that I would like to say.
Yes, sir.
Just one thing that I would like students to know, that Sunil is not only a scholar in every sense of the term, but he's a great fighter. He has fought off a life-threatening medical condition, and you can almost say that he has been given second birth by the Almighty. So we are really, really grateful to the Almighty for giving Sunil back to us. And
Thank you,
Sunil
sir.
is such a great fighter. I mean, if you go through his life history, you will realize how hard it was all the time, even though he has always been, brought up very lovingly by his very scholarly father, who at one point in time was vice chancellor of a university in Jharkhand. So his entire family is a very scholarly family. He has gained his PhD fellowship from IIM Bangalore. It was the first of its kind, because no one before Sunil had ever gone to IIM Bangalore for doing a fellowship or a PhD program. And one thing that I really noticed, something great about him, is that he always tries to look at things from historical perspective. And unless you look at things from historical perspective, you don't get the right ideas about that particular concept. So there is a great lesson in listening to Sunil. Thank you so much, Sunil, for being with us, for your precious time. And we will always remember this particular lecture of yours as a great lecture. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.